All right, so I had an entirely different theme for today, okay? But today I'm going to get more personal. I mean, literally just minutes ago, I felt that God wanted me to tell you my story. My story may not be interesting to some, but for some, it might be of real help. So listen in. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know today's video is going to be a little more personal, and in a moment, you're going to know why. I mean, I even put on the Dadalorian t shirt here instead of the usual business-like shirt. But anyway, if you want to continue to learn how God's Word speaks truth to today's issues in the culture and also theological trends and things that are going on in the church today, then this is your channel. So while you're listening to the video today, would you please hit like and then also share the video with somebody else? And as well, if you would subscribe, hit the bell so you can get all the notifications. That way you'll be up on the latest. Well, anyway, let's listen to, my story. Hey, everybody. So here's my story. In 2019, I was asked by a missionary while I was down in Honduras on a missions trip. That missionary asked me to tell my story, or what we call in Christian circles, my testimony. It hit me all of a sudden that besides my family and the church that I pastor, and my home church where I grew up in, outside of that, I had not for literally decades told my testimony, nor had anybody asked me to. And so let me tell you about what happened in my life. And I'm doing this because of Easter, Jesus' story. You see, as I was growing up in South Florida, I had loving parents, but I had a father who I knew that loved me. But my father he was addicted to alcohol. He would not have admitted that openly. He didn't ever do that, but he was abusing alcohol. My mom, on the other hand, was just a wonderful, fantastic, God-fearing, God-loving, Jesus-following woman of God. She just was. And her influence was key in my life to being, literally saved. So throughout the years, my dad would just almost on a daily basis, I could remember coming home, especially in junior high and high school, coming home every day from school wondering how my dad would be. Was he going to be happy or was he going to be angry? Was he going to be happy drunk or was he going to be angry drunk? And he would just sip the alcohol, mostly vodka, mixed with orange juice or Coke or Pepsi. And he would have that plastic Tupperware glass in his hand all the time. And things would just trigger him, and it didn't take much. And he wouldn't be just angry, he would be in a rage. And this would happen on a pretty regular basis. And so my mom would always wear long sleeve dresses when she went to work. She was the secretary at the Christian school I went to. And she would wear those long sleeves because she had bruises on her arms because my father would grab her and hit her and squeeze her too tightly and injure her arms and scream at her. And it was just bad. I spent many hours standing between them, or I got the brunt of the physical abuse and as well. And it was scary at times. The scariest probably is when he pulled out a gun and shot at the ceiling, and thank God did not shoot at us. So we lived in constant fear and intimidation throughout the years that I grew up, growing up in North Miami and then also in west of Fort Lauderdale in western Broward County. These were long, rough years to see the abuse happen to my mom and to myself as well. And I remember one time just sharing, putting what we call a gospel tract, a pamphlet with the story of Jesus in there and the gospel message, and putting it in his night bag because he worked as a police officer in night shift, and he would carry that bag with him. And he came home one morning and sat me on the couch and told me, "Don't you ever do that again." And I didn't. For the rest of my years, I just prayed for him. Thankfully, as I became an adult and got married, our relationship improved. And in the end, thank God, I'd forgiven him. We had some good long talks, and overall, it ended well because he died of lung cancer in 1989. So I have a real problem with alcohol and cigarettes as well, or any substance abuse, because I know what it can do to destroy lives and destroy the lives of those that love those who abuse those substances. In between that, when I was around 13, my dad became good friends with a police officer in the town we lived in. My dad was a police officer down in the Dade County area, but we lived in Broward County, and they became friends, and I had never learned to swim. And you say, well, what has that to do with anything? So I was given the opportunity to be taught how to swim by this police officer. And so I went to go hang out with him at his place. My parents even let me spend the night. They fully trusted him, so did I. And as I got there and arrived that afternoon, after a little bit of time hanging out there, we went down to the pool. He did instruct me in some swimming, and then we got back to his apartment. He was going to cook dinner, and then he said, look, I want you to see some things. And so he plopped some pornographic magazines in front of me. And with those pornographic magazines in front of me, he essentially coerced me into constantly looking at those pages, which is why even to today, I have to constantly fight that temptation to be involved visually with any kind of pornography and those kind of things. So, but anyway, he wanted me to see those, and he was grooming me, trying to groom me quickly so he could sexually abuse me. And he began to do that, but then drew back. And somehow, by the grace of God, we got through the night. I couldn't wait to get home the next morning. He took me home pretty quickly. Interestingly enough, and mysteriously enough, he disappeared. I remember my dad coming home one day and telling my mom, he says, you know, so-and-so? She said, well, yeah. Because he'd come over for dinner, and they'd had some great times together, and I just looked up to him. He goes, yeah, he just never reported for work, turned in his stuff, left it there, and disappeared. Never heard from him again. And so I wonder why. But nevertheless, so I had those instances that happened in my life, but then something happened. I was given the opportunity to hear, and not only hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, but also see it in the lives of other people. I grew up in a wonderful church, and my parents and my dad was totally behind this, was being able to go to the Christian school at the church as well. And so I was able to hear the gospel from early on in my life. But as they say, just being standing in a garage doesn't turn you into a car. It's the same thing with Christianity or with Jesus. Just knowing about him or being around people that do all the time, and even doing what they do, doesn't turn you into a follower of Jesus. And so I was at my first camp when I was age 15, and again, still at home, a lot of this stuff going on, and living in fear and intimidation all the time, and a very low self-image. All of those things put together were constantly going on. The beatings of my mother and myself were still going on a lot. And so I went to my first summer camp, and there I heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. I had heard it many times before, had even said that I had accepted Jesus or prayed the sinner's prayer. But nevertheless, I realized at that time that I could no longer stand in a garage hoping that I would become the car that's there. So I realized I needed to make that choice with my full mind and with my full heart, and I did. And then when we got back, I followed the Lord in baptism and obedience to him, and later was called to ministry. So again, I'm being very brief with my message and with my story, and if you want to know more, feel free to email me, okay? Email me at info@truthunbound.org. And I would love to converse with you if I can be of any help to you, or you want to share this with somebody else. Look, I know what alcohol does in a home. I know what abuse can do to the mind and the body and the emotions and the heart of a person and the spirit of a person. It can break their spirit and not only break their heart, but break their spirit. But then I heard about Jesus. You see, we're coming up on Easter here, and Jesus, it's the story that we've heard for centuries, but is it real to you? Jesus died and rose again. There was a time where I wanted to know the evidences of the message of the good news, the gospel itself. Did Jesus die on the cross? Did he really exist? Did he really raise from the dead? And the evidence is overwhelming that he did, and that he was who he said he was, and he is who he says he is. And there's a decision to make with that. And I came to that choice. I thought I could keep on living the lie and keep acting like I was a believer and acting like I was a Christian, but in reality, I wasn't, because I had never really made that willful choice to follow Jesus. My mind and my heart were leaning that way, but then I realized I needed to tell him myself, I am a sinner. I believe in you. Jesus. And I believe that you died on the cross for me, rose again from the dead for me. Save me. I'm a sinner, Lord. Save me. And at that moment, I knew the promise of God had come true in my life. Oh, yeah, I've had times of doubt. I've had times of some tremendous trouble and temptation. But I've never let go of the fact that I know that Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead to save me. And he'll do the same for you. In fact, he did do the same for you. He did the same for everybody. But it doesn't become effective in your life until you tell him, I'm a sinner. Come into my life. I am broken. I can't do this on my own. Save me. I'm yours. Will you do that today? If that is your desire, or you have questions about the Christian faith, or questions about the reality or existence of Jesus and what he did and who he supposedly is supposed to be today, and I believe he is because the evidence is there, would you write me an email at info@truthunbound.org? And I would love to discuss it with you and love to answer your questions. Would you continue to listen to Truth Unbound as well here on the channel? Because as we go along each week and at other times in between, we're going to put up videos that answer many of the questions that you and others have about the faith, about Christianity, about Jesus, about the Bible. That's what we exist to do here, is to defend and present and relate the truth of God to the current trends in culture, in theology, in the church, and in life, the questions that we have. God speaks to every one of them. And the way he speaks to you most directly is through the good news of Jesus Christ, that God sent his son to die for your sin, all of it, past, present, and future, and to give you eternal life if you'll just believe in him and what he did for you. Will you do that today? Thank you so much for listening. I know this was more personal. This wasn't an issue with points and all those things that we usually do, but nevertheless, it's my gift to you, especially with it being here in Easter in 2021, to celebrate the fact that God came into this world to save you and to save me. I made that choice, and you can too. We'll see you next time.